guys, welcome to another episode of the Food Origins Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Firecracker Farm, and if you're watching, you guys will be able to see it. They are a company out of Florida that infuse hot peppers into sea salt. Really awesome stuff. I've been using it for over a year now. They come in these awesome push grinders. This is a special buddy batch called Snake Eater. It's infused with Tennessee bourbon and bitters. Really cool stuff. I love using this on eggs in the morning, steak as a finisher. Really good stuff. Some of my two favorites also is Pineapple Express and Apocalypto. And 10% of the proceeds go to Op 300 and Pipe Hitter Foundation. Get that in there for you guys. And I have a discount code 10% off Food Origins Pod C at firecracker.farm. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. It's an awesome episode.
Yeah, we'll fitter because of you, man. Yeah, so we'll get rolling. Thanks everybody. Another awesome episode of the Food Origins Podcast. My guest today is Jason Khalipa. I'll give a little intro for him and then we'll get right into it. But Jason, if you know him as the 2008 CrossFit Games champion and also had 8 appearances, he's the founder of NC Fit Gyms. He's the author of As Many Reps as Possible. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. I would say he's not far from black belt. Jason Khalipa has his own podcast with his co-host Gabe. Jason and I met through his Train Hard Men's Club in Los Gatos, which we'll get into later. He's also started his Train Hard Fit programming, along with a bunch of apparel and other things going with that. He's also now, his latest challenge is Tactical Games competitor. And not last but not least, he's a father, husband, protector, provider. And thanks, Jason. You've made me a fitter person today. And I'm sure everyone else could say the same thing. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, of course. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's good to see you, even though we're not in person, right? It's good to see you and your face. It's been a little while since I, last saw you at the men's club. So yeah, man, hopefully you're rocking and rolling. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Yeah, just keeping it rolling, trying to get those workouts in wherever I can and doing a lot of stuff at home. One of the things, like that connects us a lot is, and that's why I started this podcast, was food. And, so we'll talk a lot about food, but the easiest thing for me is for us to get going is give us your background, your ethnic background, and then tell us what you ate growing up as a kid.
Oh man. All right. My background. So my dad is from Iran. My mom is Italian, her family came here from Italy to Rhode Island, from Rhode Island to California. So definitely some, a large Sicilian background there. And then, Rhode Island obviously had an impact, I'd say from the food perspective as well, but primarily Sicilian Italian. And then my dad, obviously coming from Iran, very much so Persian food. So I'd say growing up, it was a blend of those two. A lot of Persian food in the house. My mom would traditionally make a lot of Italian food for sure. But then as we grew up, any party we went to, anytime we went out, in general, we were having Persian, food. So it was a blend of those two. And then as I've gotten older, my wife's family is Persian. And so we've had, typically a lot of Persian food around and then Italian food as well. So I'd say my favorite food isn't either one of those, but that's the way I grew up.
Well, like what'd you eat? Like what were some of the dishes that you ate?
I mean, growing up, a lot of pastas, a lot of like casseroles, from my mom's side, those type of things, a variety of different types. And then on the Persian side, you have gourmet sabzi, which is like basically like chopped up herbs with some meat stew. It's really good. Kubide, which is like a type of kebab, which is like ground beef that you put on these skewers. I'm sure you've seen that. And then all different types of kebabs, right? Whether it's lamb, whether it's chicken, you name it, all over direct flame. And so that was different. And then obviously from there, you have like something called tadik, which is like hard rice. It's really good. Stews, hard rices, and basically kebabs, I'd say, build up the majority of Persian cuisine. Someone listening who is Persian be like, oh, how about this? I'd say, I'm just saying the majority of what I enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the tadik I know is like, it's got that crispy crust on it, right? When they flip it over out of the pot.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah. And I've had it made a lot of different ways. If you go to a restaurant, sometimes they'll make it and it's really, really hard. Typically when you get it homemade, and there's different ways of doing this. So this is just the way that I've had to experience in so many different ways. But my favorite way is you'll take like essentially tortillas and you'll put them on the bottom of rice as it's cooking. And so when it comes out, you flip over and it has like these tortillas, for lack of a better term. Sometimes they'll also use like a bread on the bottom, and it turns into like this crispy, just like deliciousness. So yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, like I tell everyone, if you're listening to this podcast, you better have eaten already because you're going to get hungry.
Yeah.
Is there anything you didn't like? Because a lot of times, when we were growing up, we're like, oh, and then like maybe it changed later, or you still don't like it.
I mean, a lot of like the gamey meat, like, a lot of in the Persian culture, you'll do lamb balls and kidney and liver and things like that. I would say I still don't like those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still don't like that. My dad's favorite was like liver and onions. And I just remember my mom would cook it sometimes. It just smelled up the house terrible. So yeah, that's what growing up, but I still don't like it.
Okay. And then kind of getting into, as you got older and you became an athlete, my question, and a lot of people will ask you, is how did you develop a kind of a nutrition profile? How did you develop that profile of what to eat when you're competing,
Yeah,
How'd
I mean,
that come about?
competing in CrossFit is a very different type of sport because it requires so much energy expenditure. And so because you're spending so much time training and expending energy, you kind of can get away with eating a lot of different foods that may not be the best. When I was at my peak of CrossFit Games training, I would train in the morning, afternoon, evening. And so if you just had like, chicken breast and rice, you just wouldn't be able to consume the amount of calories needed. It's like when Michael Phelps was talking about how many calories he had when he would spend so much time in the pool. It's hard to get those calories with broccoli. And so for me, it was basically consuming a lot of, essentially whatever I can get my hands on, but it was a lot of like meat. It was a lot of rice. It was a lot of peanut butter and nuts, a lot of it, because it was kind of like got a lot of fat, got a lot of calories from it, and then just grabbing onto at night any type of like desserts I could even find. That was very common back then. Then it evolved where I wouldn't really eat. I'd fast until about like 2:00 in the afternoon because I would train. This is for the last like 10 years. And then as of January of this year, I've been trying something new, and it's really been working well, where it's 3 solid meals a day that I focus primarily on protein with, at least 50 grams of protein per meal. And I've been eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's been really, really impactful on me because at night, I don't feel so starved to go grab whatever I could find. I feel more full. I feel more controlled. And if I want to have a cookie or whatever, I'm going to have half a cookie instead of 7 of them because I'm so hungry from earlier in the day. So that's been really helpful for me as of lately.
Yeah. I mean, I think like you have that, like I was reading through, because thanks for sending out the nutrition profile. So if you guys are
the Train Hard 5.
The Train Hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have your 5 pillars. Protein is king, your 3 main meals without skipping them. Then you talk about alcohol being a barrier to progress, and then consistency over perfection, and then kind of a, weekly progress tracking, taking a picture of yourself to kind of help you out. How did, how's alcohol become a barrier? I know some people can get away with it, so to speak, but a lot of people, it does hinder them, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that for many people, many of the times, alcohol is probably not serving them. For most people, most of the time. For the last 8 weeks, I haven't had anything to drink, and I feel good. I will be reintroducing it, but I want to reintroduce it in a constructive way. I want to reintroduce it not as a crutch, but instead as something that I'm doing intentionally. And I think by taking it out, it allowed me to figure out what moderation really is. I wouldn't consider myself the last like couple of years like a huge drinker, but I definitely drank, and I don't, it's fine. What I would say is that if drinking and alcohol, and if you're listening to this, if it's getting in the way of your results, you do, it because you're doing well Monday through Thursday. And then all of a sudden Friday, Saturday, Sunday is you fall off the wagon. You drink, it reduces your inhibition. So you say, hey, fuck it, I'm just going to have some pizza. And then all of a sudden, all that work that you did during the week to like eat clean, prioritize your fitness, whatever, it's hard because your sleep is impacted, your recovery is impacted, your testosterone is impacted. All these type of things are impacted from alcohol. And so I think it really becomes this thing where take it out and then reintroduce it the way you want to reintroduce it. I'm not here to say like, dude, there's plenty of people that say don't drink at all. That's not the case for me. I find that a lot of value in going wine tasting with my wife and being able to have that experience together. I enjoy that and I don't want to get rid of it, but it doesn't hinder my ability to wake up the next day to train hard and get after it. And I think if that's happening to you in your life, take it out and then reintroduce it in a way that works for you.
Yeah. I've never been a big drinker, but it's enjoying that just having that enjoyment and just being able to enjoy it for a good meal and then not making it a big thing is key. Then I got to ask you, I know you love coffee. So what's your go-to for coffee?
Oh man. I mean, as of right now, my go-to I'd say is probably like it's a good question. So I'm a sucker. So lately, since January 1st, every morning at, early morning, I'm up. I start the espresso machine like around 5:50. I hit a little shot of espresso with nothing really in it. And then I train. After I train later in the day, a little bit later, I'll do a pour over. And typically I'll just do a pour over of like a light roast. I love light roast coffee. And I'll typically add some MCT powder or a little bit of oat milk. And that's about it. That's my go-to right now. So it's an espresso shot in the morning and then a pour over, after breakfast.
Okay. And then I was going to ask you, do you do the collagen coffee too, like that?
Yeah, I have in the past. Collagen, MCT powder. I've done all the things. I've done bulletproof where you do with the butter. I've done everything. Right now where I'm at is I don't put collagen in it. I just stick to a little bit of MCT powder. And the reason why I like that coconut oil MCT is because I do feel like it gives me like a really solid like energy that's consistent, but I don't put it in my coffee at all times.
Okay. And then you were talking about favorite meals. What is your favorite thing?
Oh man, I mean, my favorite type of food is probably Mexican food. Is probably my favorite type. I just think the variety is so awesome. Look, Persian food, Italian food, Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai. I mean, they all have their benefits. But if I had to eat one type of food forever, it would be Mexican because, dude, you could have fajitas, you could have tacos, you could have quesadillas, you could have nachos, you could have, carne asada, pastor. I mean, dude, there's just so many options and it's so damn good. So that's my favorite. That's my favorite meal. In particular, like a really good nachos. That's my go-to.
Would that be considered, because I know everyone wants to ask you what your cheat meal is. Would that be your go-to cheat meal if you're going to jump off the...
I would say like my go-to like quote unquote cheat is like muffins. Yeah. I mean, dude, the thing about it is like, I think people get wrapped up in this idea of cheat meals because they're trying to eat so clean all the time. For me, most of my diet consists of like eggs, bacon, ground beef, and rice for the most part, and some avocado in general. And then, obviously I'll add in some vegetables and some other stuff, but I think that we believe in this 90-10 rule where it's like, dude, eat pretty clean 90% of the time and give yourself some grace and have a muffin or have a cookie 10% of the time. And it's because that's what I want to eat for the rest of my life. So for me, I don't really look at it as like, oh, I'm going to have a cheat day or a cheat meal. It's just like, hey, later tonight, if I feel like I want to have half a muffin, like I'm going to eat it and I'm not going to feel bad about it. It's all good. That's what I look at it.
Yeah. And like you were talking about, like not starving yourself. You're having 3 meals instead of like, oh, I'm going to fast till noon. I'm going to work out. And then, you're starving by the time you get to noon because you're like, you've worked out, you maybe just coffee alone. And then all of a sudden at noon, you're just like,
you're smoked.
Yeah.
And that brings up another point too, is like, you want whatever you could find. And so you're not making as good of decisions. But I think also, the thing about nutrition is you got to feel your body and you got to ask yourself, do I look and am I performing the way I want? And if you look the way you want, right, then just kind of find maintenance mode. For me, I'm pretty close to the physique that I'm looking for. Pretty close. Would I like to be a little bit leaner? Sure. But if you're not even close to the physique you're looking for, and you're not even close to the performance you're looking for, you got to make some pretty dramatic changes. You have to reduce probably your caloric intake and to see any type of change. Those type of people need to be a little bit more regimented. And maybe you start, looking at your macros, maybe you start doing this. For me, I kind of eat more intuitively because I have been training hard for 20 years. So it's just a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, you have that elite advantage, but also it's like I've been, even myself, self-discovery of different items. And like, I think it's difficult for some people just to find good food, like just to describe, like get good whole foods. And then they go, oh, I got it. And you're like, well, actually that's, got this in it, or, the bread they had has got all this enriched stuff. And so it's just having them dig in and do a little bit of research. Like if you can get fresh sourdough without, that's just got bread, water, and salt, which is all it should have, and not these 20 other ingredients, unfortunately, which the store, has a lot. And that's a troublesome thing too, because, it would be so much better if it could be easier that way, and people would be eating a lot better,
I think some food prep is a good way to go. Sundays, order your food from
Yeah.
Costco, make a bunch of ground beef. Like my go-to as of recently is just a ton of ground beef, some rice, and then some, what do you call it? The vegetable stock or bone broth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And so, dude, if I make like a big thing of that, then all of a sudden, what can I do with that? Well, I can pull a little bit out. I can mix with eggs. That's a breakfast piece. I can have just it for lunch. And because I'm not like putting a ton of like crazy like seasonings and all kinds of like weird nightshades and whatever into it, I could also have it midday and not feel like shit afterwards. I can still go train. So that's something I've also had to learn, is that if you have like a really simple meal of like a protein and a carbohydrate and maybe some fat in there, sure. Without having like a ton of like strong garlicky or this or that, dude, you can eat that and basically like a little bit later go and train and you'll feel perfectly fine for me. But some people, right, if you go too crazy, like if you're having something a little bit too, I guess the point I'm trying to make is the simpler the better before I'm about to go train. If it's too complex, too many flavor profiles, I don't feel as good when I'm training. So that's something I've had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Does it kind of, do you think like you've probably tried all the different stuff and sometimes it just upsets your stomach, right? And then you feel like crap during the workout and then or you got to stop in the middle and go to the bathroom and come back,
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it's like I train early, I train midday, I go to jiu-jitsu midday, right? And so just finding and I think, everybody has their own laboratory. I think I'd be really, really, really careful. I'd really encourage everybody listening. Like, dude, there's so many food experts out there. There's so many experts in the field that what they are preaching is not going to work for you. You need to find what works for you and be your own laboratory, because everybody's a little bit different. There's some macro themes that make sense, right? Like in general, people agree you probably shouldn't be having 10 sodas a day and consuming a shit ton of sugar. Okay, we could agree on many things, but then from there, you got to figure out what works for you. There's people that are going to pitch keto, paleo, zone, macros. You have to find what works for you, and not everything is going to work for everybody.
A lot of people doing carnivore, which, it helps if you're trying to lean out, I guess. But everybody, that's what I was trying to get to, is that finding that profile for your body and just testing everything out. But also just like looking at ingredients and just saying, okay, if it's not got 20 items in there and it's supposed to have 3, it's kind of a given that we shouldn't be eating that. I looked at some of your recipes and you got like sriracha chicken in your book, and then you got the egg scramble. So I like that. I like to do meal prep too. I love to cook. So a lot of times I'll cook a batch of chicken so that it's in the fridge, easy to grab. And I'm like, oh, cool. I can have it with eggs in the morning or make it into a fried rice or something. Yeah, I like cooking big batches, and then it helps during the week, and it also cuts on time. If you're short on time. Do you have did you do any protein shakes at all or anything like that?
So I have like the Jocko Fuel. They have like a peanut butter chocolate flavor I like. I don't typically drink it. It's probably going to be something I'm going to start incorporating a little bit more as I'm getting a little bit older, but no, it's never been like a huge part of my diet. I typically will eat real food, but I'm becoming more open-minded to it as I'm trying to prioritize more protein in my diet. It is a little bit easier, especially after workout, instead of like just immediately eating, to just consume a nice protein shake. So yeah, I mean, again,
something on the go.
Prioritizing. Yeah, I think real food is the way to go. But I think if you can't get that, then sure, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. And then you talked about, and I've been seeing this a lot more, yogurt as dessert. Is that kind of a new thing, sort of?
Yeah. I mean, so back in the day, I used to love peanut butter and honey as a dessert, actually. But as of recently, I've shifted to like this full fat yogurt with a little bit of honey. And I like it. So my wife bought it, and the kids like it. And so I started like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to try it. And dude, I mean, it's pretty satiating, right? Because you get like this full fat, relatively high protein for what it is, yogurt. And you blend that with a little bit of fruit or maybe a little bit of honey. And it's been a great, just kind of dessert where it's not, some people might say, hey, it has this amount of sugar. Well, it's like, dude, you're also getting a ton of protein there. And so I think as a dessert, it's been pretty helpful for sure.
Yeah. And then, like you said, it keeps you from eating a bunch of cake or ice cream at nighttime. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I'm not lean anymore after a month of that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch
awesome,
my
dude.
camera, but all good.
Yeah. And then, kind of switching things up. I know there's, what's cool about my podcast is I can ask you anything, and we've kind of got a general idea, and we have a lot of things in common, especially with jiu-jitsu. There's a question from Justin. I know you know who he is. Wanted to ask you about jiu-jitsu. No, different one, different Justin. And you'll know in a second. You'll know in a second. You'll know in a second. His question was, going into jiu-jitsu and law enforcement, what do you think the kind of thing that we can the cycle's already changed. Even when I was in the department, we had black belts teaching us some jiu-jitsu tactics, but what do you think can break the kind of normal cycle? I wouldn't say normal cycle, just kind of break the ice more on guys training, getting into jiu-jitsu a lot more?
Dude, I think we got to explain the why for these guys more often. I was at the sheriff's department last week and I was putting on an event for the academy. I do this pretty often. I try and support law enforcement as much as possible. And this guy comes up to me, he's like, "Hey man, do you think I should be doing jiu-jitsu?" And I looked at him like, "What do you mean?" It's like saying, "Hey, do you think I should drink water?" It's like, "Yeah, dude, you should probably drink water." And it's the same idea for jiu-jitsu. These guys have decided to be in law enforcement. That's what they've decided to do for work. Yeah. And they have an obligation to themselves and their family to be the hardest guy in the room to kill. Like that's the obligation. That's what you're signing up for as far as I'm concerned. When you make that oath to do your job, you're also signing up to being like the baddest mother effer in the room. Like that's just the way I look at it. And jiu-jitsu is a tool in that, I think, because it can develop self-confidence. It could allow you to control a situation without having to escalate to, less lethal or more lethal, forms of weapons. And I think at the end of the day, when I told this guy, I was like, "Look, today you are who you are. If you choose to go do jiu-jitsu, a year from now, you're going to look back at who you are today and be like, wow, I could literally do whatever I want to that person and they could do nothing about it." And that's the power that jiu-jitsu can give law enforcement, is you need to recognize like, dude, the why is get back to your family. The why is be there for them. The why is like, you're signing up for this. So you should try and acquire as many tools as possible to be able to do your job the most effective way you can. And learning jiu-jitsu allows you to have this gentle art where, dude, you could control somebody without having to escalate the situation. And I think once people realize just how effective jiu-jitsu is, it could change their life. They just have to go do it.
Agreed. I mean, I was in the department from 2006 to almost like 4 years ago. And yeah, I'd been doing jiu-jitsu since 2009. And it was, phenomenal. And it's because it's not saying like, "Oh, I know, what to do." It's also like you're having somebody grab you on a every other day basis. So you're not surprised when someone does it in person, when you're trying to arrest somebody or you're making contact with suspect and he grabs you, you're not surprised by it at all. You're like, "Oh, this is how I can get out of that. Oh, it's on, fight's on, let's go." And you're kind of ready for it. And I appreciate you doing that. So like, what have you been doing with the departments? Are you teaching them kind of a little bit of doing some motivational fitness? What are you doing with the departments?
Yeah. We talk a little bit about command presence. Probably could talk more about it. I remember back in the day, I knew this guy, Freddie Camacho. I don't know if you ever heard of Freddie.
I do
Camacho.
Know Freddie.
This dude.
Yeah.
Freddie embodied the idea of command presence more than anybody I knew. He was a Muay Thai fighter turned jiu-jitsu guy, turned CrossFit guy. Yep. And I just remember he was with Union City PD, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Union City. And dude, this guy would show up to a scene and like, bro, you just look at him and be like, "Ah, man, yeah, I'm good." Like if you're a bad guy, you just look at him, you're like, you know what? I'm cool. Like I don't because he just had this presence, right? He just looked the part. He was jacked. Mm-hmm. You knew damn well the way he talked, like, "Hey man, I'm comfortable. Like we're good." So those are some of the things I talk about with these departments is like, how do you get in a situation where you have the command presence where you can walk up and have that comfort, that earned confidence that that you can go hands-on or you can do this and that and you'll be okay, right? And so I talk about what does it mean to me to train, how to train, how should we train? Like what should we do? Then what does it mean to protect, in my opinion, as a civilian? And then what does it mean to provide as a civilian? And how they could take that as inspiration into their careers. When they come out of the academy, they're in the best shape of their life, but then all of a sudden they're never tested again on their fitness ever. They qual with the firearm, I don't know, whatever it is, twice a year, which is okay. But if they never use that firearm on a regular basis, if they don't have exposure to it, how can they expect to perform when things are asked of them? And so those are some of the talks that I give. It's a lot of motivational and a lot of like cheat codes on how I think fitness can help them in their job and what they could do 3 days a week, 1 hour a day to be really capable.
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced it with you coaching us through the workouts. I mean, just putting us through the paces and kind of getting us through it. And, like I like some of the things like your burpee test, for instance, which you like, hey, if you can do 20 in a minute, great. But if you can't do 20 in a minute for the next 5 minutes, that's not what you want to be doing. You want to be able to hold that cadence. And I do want to talk to you about cadence, but hold that rep throughout the 5 minutes. So that you're saying like, if you can do 10, great, do 10, but do 10 every minute for that 5 minute test.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, with the law enforcement, I'm just trying to give them cheat codes. I've been in the fitness space since I was 15. Over 20 years, I've been dedicating my life to trying to help people get fit and capable. And especially in the last year, I've really been dedicated to helping men. I want to help men get fitter, get more capable. I want to be able to shake someone and be like, bro, you got to be able to go do stuff with your kids. If you can't go do something your kid wants to go do because you physically are unable to, like that's a problem. And we need to address it. And there's a solution. It's training. That's it. Like, and so, every week for the last 18 months, I've been hosting for free in a parking lot men's club meetup because I wanted to not just talk about it. I wanted to be about it. I wanted to be able to, back up my actions with words, back up my words with action, where I was telling guys like, dude, we got to get you off the couch. But then all of a sudden it's like, well, go join a gym, go do this. It's like, no, you know what? Come see me in the parking lot and we're just going to get down and dirty. And it's been really powerful because a lot of these guys, they put fitness on too big of a pedestal. Maybe even some of your audience does, where they put fitness on too big of a pedestal. Say that is unattainable for me. The reality is 3 things. Number 1 is that if you were to commit yourself even 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week, you could see life-changing results in a very short period of time as a man. Like men have it good in terms of creating adaptation pretty quickly. The second part of that is like, if what you're doing today isn't working, what's the alternative? Like you have an obligation to make a change. Yeah. And you know what I'm saying? And like, there's no other option. And then the third is like, dude, it's doable because if you look back on this podcast and you're listening, you're like, dude, you know what, man? My current situation, it is just not sustainable for me. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I can't keep up with them. And they're only going to get older and more difficult. It's only going to get more challenging. You got to start today. And the final piece about fitness is, the third piece is like, if you're not motivated by 6-pack abs, by being able to keep with your kids, if you're not motivated by any of that, right? Be motivated by what it does in between your ears. When you go and you train hard, you show up different, you show up better, you show up more controlled, you show up the way probably you want to show up. And everybody knows what that feeling is. Calm, cool, collected, because you got out that energy, that excess energy that you had to. So I would say that every guy listening, if you're not getting after it at least 3 days a week, man, you're missing out on like the greatest gift ever.
100%. And if you're not near Jason and not taking advantage of his free workout early in the morning, you are definitely missing out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, make sure to check out th.fit. We have a lot of our newsletter, I think, is really great. We obviously have our podcast, the Jason Khalipa podcast, and we have all kinds of online programs. We have some new stuff coming out, so stay tuned on that. th.fit, or you can just go to Jason Khalipa's Instagram.
Oh yeah, and I will be putting all that stuff in the show notes too.
Cool, man.
And speaking of like going through all the, trying to manage it all, do you have any like kind of cheat codes at how you balance everything, especially through, peaks and valleys? Like I've had plenty of valleys and struggles with injuries and a lot of other things that we've talked about, I've talked to you about. And how do you manage it all? What is your mindset going through when something's really, really rough?
I mean, I think first and foremost is that you have to be grounded in something. And I think that, obviously faith is a huge thing for many people, but I think you could be grounded in workouts. Like if you're saying, hey, I'm not a faith-based person. Okay, well, I would encourage you to explore what works for you. But I would say that you have to be, it starts with working out. If you're a guy out there, overweight, out of shape, can't keep up with his kids, shitty relationship with his wife, whatever. Most of these problems, a step in the right direction, start with you doing some push-ups. And I know that sounds like super bold. It's like, wait, dude, come on. But I believe in therapy. I believe in all these things. I believe in all of this stuff, right? Yeah. But the number one thing is if we could just get a guy to start moving, if we could just get a guy to start doing that, what happens? All of a sudden you build more confidence. So what does that do for you? All of a sudden you start learning how to overcome hard things. What does that do for you? Right. And I think we've lost that as a society, and we got to get back there. So the answer to your question is, I've had plenty of hard things occur in my life, just like you, and just like many of the men listening. And life is going to be hard. Like, that is the expectation we have, is that life is going to be hard. So what can we do about it? We can go do hard things to prepare us mentally to overcome those things, is my take on it.
Yeah. Perfect.
I'm working on a new manifesto, actually, Dave. And
Oh, yeah?
here, yeah. So a new manifesto. I just pulled it up here. So this is the Train Hard manifesto. I'll just share this with you.
Awesome.
Step number 1. There's a bunch more of this, but like, we are standard. This is our code. You're either in or you're out. It's kind of like this manifesto. It's life will be hard. You will be harder. Hardship is inevitable. Financial strain, loss, etc. You train because life demands a stronger version of you. We don't fold. We don't wait. We prepare. So the number 1 step to this manifesto that I'm creating is that just setting the tone. Life will be hard. Then it goes into stack wins early. I believe that getting up early, training hard, just stacks wins, man. You're putting points on the scoreboard. You're going to be able to show up better. Then we talk about this idea of never zero, where momentum can fluctuate, and you can have days where you're feeling hot and days where you're not feeling as good. But you can't let your momentum hit zero, because as soon as you don't do anything for 1, 2, 3 days, it's very difficult to start back up again. It's like pushing a sled. When you're moving it, it's not that bad. All of a sudden, when you stop, it's really difficult to start back up again. So that's a third piece to our manifesto, is like, dude, keep the momentum going. The fourth one is this idea of protect and provide. We talk about a man who cannot protect is a liability, and a man who cannot provide is a burden. And what I mean by protect and provide is be able to run, jump, climb, lift, being able to do these things with your kids. That's providing. I'm not just talking about financially. I'm talking about doing stuff. So that's the fourth pillar. And then the final pillar is the idea of cutting the crutch, which is what you and I were talking about alcohol. So those are the 5 pieces to our manifesto. I'll be sending it to you. We're about to release it here pretty soon.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, like, I love the mantra that I call it a mantra because it's never zero, thinking about, like, oh, if I don't do that workout today, like, today I did your force workout on the bike today, because I just got one of those bike ergs that we were talking about. And that's a beat, and that thing's a beast. Like, it's 20 seconds max, and then 40 seconds max, and then 60, and then you rest in between, and you do that three times in a row, and you're about 18, 19. I did it, and like, I did too much, I think, but putting that workout through, like, it's not fun at all, but getting through it and like understanding those workouts. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, cadence. How do you develop, a lot of times people, you've obviously done it for a long time, but how does someone develop like an elite cadence? Like, how do they build to that cadence where they're like, you know what, I'm pushing hard rounds,
I mean, whether it's
it's a tough one,
on
right?
the mats, whether it's on the mats or in the gym, I think you don't fully know what you're capable of until you find out what you're capable of. And I was working with the sheriff's department the other day, or probation before that, and another group before that. And you're saying to them, guys, we got to hit the red zone. We need to know what that feels like. We need to know what it feels like to be in the red. It's like a hard grappling round. Some dude's smothering you in the face, and your heart rate is just spiking. And you're like, bro, I need to tap out. Not because I'm like get in an arm bar, but because I literally cannot breathe. That's the red, right?
Okay.
That's an extreme case of the red. But what I was trying to encourage these guys at the academy of is like, dude, we gotta grind. We have to put in this effort, because why? It's because it creates adaptation. So our body's super smart. And if we don't expose it to these limits of its experience, we won't create adaptation in that threshold. So, that could be at heavier weights, that could be at higher paces, that could be at all kinds of stuff. You don't always have to do this, but at least once or twice a week, you need to get into that red zone where you're really pushing the cadence, because that's where I feel like VO2 max adaptation, strength adaptation, you name it, really starts to occur. And so if you understand that, then you can start breaking it down into, okay, how often do I want to hit this red zone? And how do I put myself in the mindset to successfully execute on it? So that's the key, is that once or twice a week, you got to get there, and you need to just tell yourself, hey, today, dude, I got to go. But it can't be every day. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get in that zone, that cadence.
Killer. That's awesome. Getting into, your podcast, is there any surprising like lessons you've learned from any of your guests on the podcast that you got some good takeaways? I'm sure there's plenty.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it actually comes back to faith, I'd say, is the crazy. No, I don't want to use the word crazy, but we have a lot of guests on talking about a lot of different things, talking about parenting, talking about being a dad, talking about whatever. I'd say faith component has been one similar thread that's been throughout these high performers. And it's been something I've definitely been exploring more. So that I would say stands out to me as like a common thread between many different guests we've had. And then just, people doing really hard things and just extending the margins of what we think is possible. You think as a guy like, oh, dude, I'm working out twice, a month or whatever. It's like, well, dude, there's people that are doing way more than you, that are going through way harder things than you. And you could do more. That's what I'm telling myself. Like, someone has it worse and is doing better than me. You know what I mean? So that's something I reflect on a lot through this show.
Yeah. I enjoyed Bart's episode.
Quan?
I've been following. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a really good one.
He's a good dude. I like Bart Quan.
He's hilarious too.
He's funny as hell. And he's got his son. Yeah.
Yeah. It's super cool. And a lot of cool business stuff as well. And like, what do you do? Yeah. A lot of people want to ask you what's your business mindset like when you go to a new project or a new challenge?
It's changed a lot. When I got into the fitness space when I was 15, I was grateful to have some really, really good mentors. Open up a gym, open up another gym. Yep, expanding into corporate wellness. So at one point, we have 30 locations that are brick and mortar, and then we started servicing other gym owners. So we had, close to 1,000 gyms that were using our programs. Business, we had, 100 plus employees, and then COVID hit. And that really, really hurt us big time. And since then, we've consolidated a lot. And I'd say that now, here I am creeping up on 40. I'd say the biggest difference between where I'm at today and where I was is before I thought success was like more people, more money, more revenue. Now it's like, okay, how do I live a lifestyle that I really want, impact as many people as I can, but try and reduce the amount of stress as much as possible? That it's just a different outlook that I've had. So I've been trying to say no more often to ideas that pop up in my head, because as an entrepreneur, I come up with ideas 40 times a day. And I think that learning to like sit on those decisions for a little bit, letting them kind of marinate, and then deciding, I think has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you're constantly challenging yourself all the time. And the latest challenge is with the tactical games. Tell us how that's gone.
Yeah. So I competed my first tactical games, I don't know, maybe it was like 6 months ago or whatever it was, 4 months ago. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the tactical game. It's a 2-gun competition where you use a, AR platform, a rifle platform, 223 platform, rifle, and a 9mm pistol. I'm sure there's some kind of standards on that, but I just, I just had a normal, I had a staccato 9mm and a Smith & Wesson rifle with a.
This guy says normal with a staccato.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. That was a nice firearm, and with a 1x8 Night Force LVPO, and so like a variable optic on it. And before I got into it, before I committed to my first tactical games, I didn't know anything about that stuff at all, zero. And it's interesting. Right. I went to an event in Vegas. I went to SHOT Show. And as part of that, I went out and I participated in a mock tactical games. So you do like some fitness, then you fitness shot. With the pistol, I was pretty good. With the fitness, I was really good. But with the rifle, I was garbage, because he had me shooting out of the prone, different positions, and I didn't know how to use the optic well, or the scope. Right. And so through my training for tactical games, what I love the most about the overall experience is I learned how to use a firearm much more effectively. Because I committed to this competition in X date, it forced me to go to the range 3 to 4 times a week for weeks. And dude, I'm telling you, my skills exponentially got better. Same thing goes with jiu-jitsu. You set up you train right now 2 to 3 times a week. All of a sudden you say, all right, I'm going to go compete at Master Worlds or whatever it is. You find yourself training 4 or 5 days a week, right? And so I think it's really important to set up these milestones throughout the year to keep you inspired, motivated, and learn new skills, because nothing helps you learn new skills than like setting something up on the calendar and saying, bro, I'm doing this. Like I did a High Rocks this year. I'm gonna be doing another tactical games. I'm doing a jiu-jitsu tournament. And when you commit to it, it makes it much easier to train for something.
It kind of gives you that added pressure goal, right? Like it sits both those things in there. There's going to be pressure's on to compete, but then also it's that goal. It'll say, oh yeah, I got to make a certain weight, or I have to make a certain, hit my marks, especially in shooting. And it's just awesome to see you going through that as someone who's accomplished a lot already, but you're willing to put yourself in the fire and learn new stuff.
Yeah, that's really the only option. I don't see another option but doing that forever and finding things that matter to me. I really wanted to acquire new skills with the firearm. It was important to me. And so now, I feel much more capable, and that's cool. It's the same thing that you're talking about with law enforcement. Like, dude, if you're worried about going hands-on with somebody, and if you don't have that level of confidence, there's something you could do about it. You just got to start training. And it's not going to happen overnight, but eventually you'll be in a much better position. Like, I look back on the shooter that I was a year ago compared to the shooter I am today. And like, I'm proud of that accomplishment. And I think everyone listening who has a weakness in their game, dude, a year from now, you're going to be proud of what you've accomplished. It's almost like putting money away in a savings account or making an investment, in a week, a month, it doesn't look like much. All of a sudden you look back a year from now and it's gained, 10%, whatever, compounding interest. And you're like, wow, like, holy crap, my X amount of dollars turned into this. The same feeling you get when you start doing jiu-jitsu or start learning how to, shoot better.
Yeah. And it's like picking up skills. Like, a lot of people ask me about cooking a lot, because I cook all the time, and people are intimidated by a recipe or intimidated by putting all those things together. And, and I've done it professionally, and then I just do it in general all the time. So like, if someone's never done it, they just, they're constantly buying pre-made food and, expecting a better result. So it's like, it's kind of fun to walk them through that and say, hey, look, this is all you need. This is what you get at the store. This is how you put it together. Learning knife skills. Oh, how do I, what knife to get, what chop, what makes things easier, or what tool for this. And, getting into that kind of fun. I got some fun questions for you too, but like getting into gear and stuff. But is there something that makes your day easy every day? Like, is there a piece of gear that's fun? I mean, I'm sure you have a gym
Like
equipment. Gear? Yeah, like EDC or something that, whether it's in the kitchen or whether in the gym,
I would say that, I mean, in my car, I carry a bunch of stuff, but like, let's just say if piece of gear, I mean, dude, obviously the gym stuff. I mean, I think an air bike, I think a barbell. I mean, those are like my tools, an air bike, a squat rack, and a barbell can go a long way. A set of dumbbells, all of that. Those are my tools, and I use them on a daily basis, and I absolutely love them. Recently, I added a stair machine called Stepper to the garage, which is awesome. It's just like an escalator style stair machine. And I added a Nordic curl machine, which is really cool. So those are like kind of like fun stuff. But I'd say as far as like a piece of gear, it all revolves around equipment that I could use to make myself more resilient, stronger, and more capable.
Perfect. Is there, getting... That's, yeah. I mean, of course, that's what we expect from you. Like, as far as gym stuff, like, getting back into some of the food stuff, that's just a fun question. But do you have any epic meals that you've had anywhere in the world? You can bring one up that you're like, man, this place was.
Yeah. So my wife hosts an annual fundraiser called Ava's Kitchen, which is an annual fundraiser for pediatric cancer. And, Chef Michael Mina is a really good family friend of ours. And so he invites all kinds of like literally top chef winners. This guy, Adam Sobel, who's an incredible chef. He also helps with all these chefs. And so I've been able to be very fortunate over the last 7-8 years with that event to have some of the best food in the world. I mean, it's been absolutely, literally, you'll have Michelin star restaurant people with top chef winners, and they'll come and they'll just cook for you, and it's great. So I would say that above all else, those have been the most impressive dining experiences I've ever had. But I've been really blessed over the years to dine in a lot of different situations. We went to 11 Madison Park when that was open, not vegan, in New York, which was a really interesting experience. They did a Netflix documentary around that. That was a cool experience. Been all the Michael Mina restaurants. Those ones are just like absolutely incredible. So I've been very blessed because of the network we have to enjoy food that most people haven't.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Fun question. If you could train with any athlete, past or present, who would it be?
Oh man, it's a good question. Maybe Kobe Bryant. His Mamba mentality, I just feel like was so powerful that definitely stands out to me. Yeah, as far as like,
I just saw a clip that somebody posted about him playing for the USA team, and Gasol, I think it was, is his teammate, was on the other team.
He knocked into him.
He told LeBron, he's like, I'm gonna go right through him the first play, and he's like, are you serious? That's your boy. He's like, I don't care. I'm gonna go right through him. And sure enough, goes right through him, knocks him on the floor, and then the guy's just like, what? And he's like, no, he wants to win. It was all about winning. that day, he's like, today we want that gold medal. We're not playing together today. It's on. And I was like, okay, that, that's taking it that extra step, right? Like today's business, tomorrow we can be homies, right?
That's basically, yeah, that was what I picked up on from that same clip. Yeah, LeBron, that was crazy. So yeah, I'd say him. Obviously, there's been a lot of greats in the past, but I think that, yeah, I mean, he's the first one that comes to mind that is interesting for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm sure if I took a moment, I'd think about a bunch of others, but I mean maybe some like old school, like Greek Olympic Games, like I'm talking like some of the original uh Olympic Games people. That would be cool. I'd have to think about who exactly that would be, but that would be
Yeah.
cool.
That'd be badass. Well, Jason, I appreciate your time. Is there anything that you want to drop? Advice, promotions? Obviously, I'll go over everything of where we can reach you. But any advice or promotions you got for us? Do you want to
No,
leave with
man. I
the
mean, look,
people?
all I want to say is that if you love food, hell yeah, me too. My family does as well. Just make sure you're balancing that with also loving, being capable. And I think that that's really important. And so if you're not inspired by, whatever, just think like, dude, tomorrow, just go for a walk, just build some momentum, build some momentum. And then join what we're doing at Train Hard, right? Get on the newsletter, get inspiration, follow on social, get inspiration. Those things will help you stay on the path. I know it's not easy for everybody, right? There's certain things that are really difficult for me to be on the path about discipline wise. For some people, it's hella easy, right? But working out, it's not an option. It has to be a part of your lifestyle, at least on some level. And so just start today, do something basic, and you'll be shocked a month or two from now how that momentum builds. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. You can find him Instagram at Jason Khalipa, website jasonkhalipa.com. You have TH Fit for all his programming, apparel. You also have his podcast, the Train Hard app, Ava's Kitchen for his cancer program, and then of course the Train Hard Men's Club. And just get after it. Thanks, Jason.
That's it. All right, brother.